Welcome to the Pro Design Builder podcast, the show where professionals and entrepreneurs share their strategies, secrets to building a thriving business and a successful life. I'm Sam, your host, as we dive deep into the world of life experiences and entrepreneurship. So, before we get going, I want to make sure that we thank our sponsors, the Pro Design Builder, which is a coaching and consulting platform for real estate investors who want to build spec home and multifamily projects. The Pro Design Builder is not just about building a business; it's about building a vision and a life by design. Also, I wanted to thank our sponsor, the Nest Collab, which is an incubator for real estate investors who want to do more deals. The Nest Collab, there'll be a link in the description to join our community. Lastly, I would like to, as you know, foster care is a subject that's near and dear to my heart. I've had 5 kids through our home. I have adopted 2 kids. I'm currently fostering 1, and I've had a number of kids through our home through respite care. The work in foster care is never over. There'll be a link to the Patreon. If you ever feel led to give, just click on the link and give to our foster care initiative. Some of the things that our initiative supports is purchasing beds for foster and adoptive parents, something that's very important. Also, oftentimes, as the primary cook in the house, if someone provides a meal for us, that's just one less hurdle that we have to take care of. Also, we support strong families. So, getting families an additional date night to keep the family strong is something that we truly believe in, and something that a lot of people have done for us. So, we know that these things work. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce our guest. Layla is a author, speaker, influencer, and entrepreneur. Her book is called Open Fields and Iron Curtains, available on Amazon. It takes place in the former Soviet Union in an orphanage of 15 years with about 800 kids. I just want to say thank you for coming on today.
Thank you, Samuel, for having me. And like you said, my name is Lilia Klaczynski. And would you like me to further introduce myself
Yeah, just tell a little bit
or
about
get into
yourself.
the
Just give it.
story?
No,
Yeah, like,
just tell a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dive into your story.
okay. Um, well, actually, I'll just get started with this one really quick. So, yeah, I was born in the early 80s, and I was in the orphanage of about 800 children. And I was there for my first 15 years of my life. And now, I mean, looking back, not looking back, but for the last 2 decades, Samuel, actually, that country, Moldova, has adopted as well the Western concept of a fostering care system rather than having actual orphanages where a large quantity of children reside.
Okay, all right. So it sounds like your childhood is pretty complex, and we're gonna have to kind of peel back some of this onion to kind of really get your perspective, which is very important to kind of hear a story like yours. So, what were you like as a kid?
I probably was most likely very difficult.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Really quick. So, I mean, for the most part, I think having this many kids in the orphanage, we were lacking a great deal of a lot of things. I mean, it was lacking just the very basics, whether it be food, clothes, and things like that. On top of that, we were lacking a great deal of emotional care, psychological, and I mean, things like "I love you" was never said. I've never heard such term until the missionaries came to the orphanage for the first time. Expressions such as, not even expressions, but like, mom, dad, brother, sister, and uncle. I was never familiar with such words at all. Till later on when I was being adopted and I'm being introduced to my siblings for the first time. So, and at age 15, getting to know all that and And then also spending time in the hospital, public hospitals, which I also had a chance to be exposed to some of those terminologies and what it's like to have a mother and a baby at her breast and what it's like to be held and things like that. Grandma and grandpa visiting, bringing treats. That was all a brand new, fascinating aspect of experiencing life at
No,
a young
that's
age.
yeah. That's I mean, so many people oftentimes take these small things for granted, and it's not until these elements are not missing that they could get a sense of appreciation for these small details, right? So, I mean, if you don't mind sharing, what were the details that landed you in the orphanage? Did you have other siblings as well? Were they there with you?
So uh, I landed in the orphanage by myself right from birth, actually. My biological mother, from what I understood, based on my adoption documents, left me at birth. I was only born at 4 pounds, 2 ounces. And in that time, medical care was very slim. Oh, it was almost non existent, meaning for a 4 pound baby to survive was pretty much considered a miracle. And I was lacking and malnourished. I could not walk, talk till I was 2 or 3 years old, right in that time. And at 3 years old, I was transferred to a small village of Moldova, Kupching, that actually it was a World War II military um, uh, compound. And after the war, they have converted to an orphanage because what had happened in that time was a lot of men have died during the war. There was more women. Procreation still continued, but now there's no fathers to care for the babies, and all these babies are being born, and they are just, the system is finding them in the trash cans and by the roads and just everywhere. And
Hmm.
this is in the communist country, in the communist system, in that time, right around that time, 12 countries or so, and Moldova sat on the very far west of the territory. So what had government decided in that time was to go ahead and collect all this large quantity of children, and this was probably in the 50s, 60s, after the World War II,
Hmm.
and placed them in the Moldova. And so Moldova, when I was little, one of my teachers was a World War II vet, and he would
Hmm.
tell us of the large influx coming in of children, and it's gained its nickname, the dumping grounds,
Oh,
after
wow.
because there was just so many orphanages. My orphanage that housed 800 children was just one small orphanage out of a lot of orphanages in Moldova.
Oh,
And if
wow.
you're familiar how big Moldova is, actually Moldova has been on the news a lot in the last couple of years because of uh, the conflict going on between Ukraine and Russia. Moldova sits right there.
Hmm.
And so a lot of people have become familiar with Moldova, as most of you know where it is. But it is 4 times smaller than Michigan. So if you can imagine the size of that, and then a large quantity of children and orphanages every 12 kilometers or so, it was definitely challenging.
No, for sure, for sure. I can't imagine. So something that's relatable that I see with children that is in foster care is this malnourishment, and then also too this delay that happens in your growth, whether it's speaking, learning, or ABCs, or the basic things. So can you kind of just tell me a little bit about, obviously there was some delay there. Did you have delays in your speaking and your reading and stuff like that? What was that struggle like for you?
Yes, absolutely, I did. I mean, and I'm not going to go into psychology aspect of it, just but by not having a child not having their motherly care right at birth, and you're just left in the crib, and the system takes care of you in large quantities. I mean, they do the best they can, I presume. But no, it's there's a lot that goes with that, and malnourishment was very, very, very common. I mean, we were given basic meals per day during the communism because the system was already in place. The system had depended greatly on the government to provide food, clothes, and everything else. So in that time, and of course the word snacks, I didn't learn that till I came to US. So but
Yeah, I got a funny story to share. Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
But in that time, it was I was behind because I was at premature birth and I was already very small. But majority of the kids that I grew up with, actually, Samuel, they were, a lot of them, a large quantity, were alcohol fetal syndrome.
Mm,
And this particular orphanage, it housed a lot of physically able children, but not necessarily mentally.
hmm.
So, and the alcohol fetal syndrome, if you're familiar with that disorder, it comes in many different levels. So it will give you, unfortunately, you'll have a lot of children that will fall behind, not
Hmm.
being able to read, not be able to write, and absolutely, that was very common.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
could not, at a young age, in my whole first 15 years of my life, I could not distinguish normal or abnormal child.
Yeah, because you're
I'm
sucked in, so to
surrounded.
speak. Yeah, you're surrounded, right? And it's your bubble, and it's
It,
also your normal,
yeah,
right?
it's my
This is
normal.
something that happened to me as well. I'll tell you a little bit about my story. Is I came from Haiti through political asylum. There was a level of violence going on, in the country. But what happened to me, we landed in the U.S. during the crack epidemic, and what you're surrounded by is this environment of violence and crime and drugs and just all of it, right? And then I remember, and this is for me, it was like the first 12 years or so. That was my normal, right? And that I didn't, I was telling my mentor when I met him, I was like, I couldn't see out until I saw out, right? I didn't know there was other options or other ways of living. I assumed that people live the way I live. That's how I thought life was, right? So this bubble that you described, that not being able to tell, what's what, I could definitely, relate to that.
Yes, yes, you're right. Our system was, and what's interesting is that our system was very closed.
Hmm.
And like, so for example, like the concept of God did not exist. The only
Correct.
concept of lowercase God existed in my system inside this fence, was the red flag and the serving of the image of Vladimir Lenin on
Hmm.
the flag. So that was our only concept of God. There was no
Correct.
understanding of any higher power or anything else. It was just did not exist. I mean,
Hmm.
we were good. We were good socialist republic, servants of the state, and that's how we were brought up in that time. And I wanted to go further, Samuel, to
Go
give
for
us
it.
a chance to. It's interesting because the communism, when it did fall, I was about 8 or 9 years old. That brought up a whole new dynamic of, I mean, talk about survival. It became the new norm, as in like the food stopped coming in, the clothes
Mm,
stopped coming in. All of a sudden, we were no longer struggling through shortages. We were struggling through nothing at all now.
nothing. Yeah.
We are receiving absolutely nothing. So starving and running. I mean, when we had villagers throw their trash over the fence into our dumpsters, you better believe it. I was like the first one in line out of so
Hmm.
many kids, and we were ready. We knew what time of the day would come.
Oh
We
wow.
were rummaging through the trash cans, and one of those was that was another near death experience. Is the concept I talk about medical care. I mean, so it was bad food poisoning. You never knew
Oh,
what you got
wow.
into the dumpsters
Correct,
because
correct,
you
correct,
ate
correct.
everything you would find,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
whether
yeah.
it be rotten apples mixed with pills, mixed with home
Whatever.
cleaning solutions or whatever else. We didn't
Hmm.
know any better. We just wanted to put something in our stomachs to live.
Correct.
And so in that time, the only way they knew how to revive us with that was one teacher would hold you down and the other one would open up your mouth and they would pour down lukewarm water with a little bit of salt down your throat and a whole lot.
It forced you to throw up.
And she would take the two fingers and stick it
Oh,
as far
wow.
as she can. And it
Huh?
would cause that expulsion of that.
Yeah, man, yeah.
And
Wow.
there was I can't tell you how many of those we've had, and they were pretty close calls with those. That was just one small little.
Hmm.
So and I'm not saying I'm pro-communist or anything like that, but
No,
because
no one will think that. So
yeah,
don't worry. Yeah.
because the way the system was set up and because it's depended so much on that, it caused the after effect and long-term effects. I mean, it went on and on for years before they could bring in the so-called new norm and try
Hmm.
to get things back in order and not in chaos.
So how would you say these experiences, especially in survival, how would you say they had long-term effects on you, on the way that you process things, or the way that you viewed things, or how were you able to, and then how were you able to recover?
Sure. Well, actually, I'm not sure I could say I've ever. I mean, I've only started to recover on the emotional aspect only just in the last 6 years. My physical suffered a lot, but I mean, in the last 30 years being in America, I have been blessed with that beyond. So, physical aspect of myself is really good. The intellectual understands a lot of what went on then and why things happened the way they did. Spiritual is always thriving because, I mean, one of the stories I have that I could share is such an amazing testimony of how great our God is. And in that time, when I was about 9 or 10 years old, and this is about a year after the fall of the communism, new director came into the orphanage, and he
Hmm.
was just a young, vibrant young gentleman.
Yeah.
And we were so excited about him. And one of the times he purchased a campsite outside of the orphanage. So this is the first time we get a chance to experience going outside the orphanage and like
Yeah.
be free. And this camp sat in the middle of the forest in the middle of nowhere.
Hmm.
Anyway, so it was one of those times. Unfortunately, there was an ambush set up, and a bully just ordered a pretty hefty beating on me. And in my book, I speak a lot about that and about the different things. And so it was one of those times when I got a pretty hefty beating because I just refused to submit to her ways. I wanted to run again and I wanted to just leave that forsaken place once and for all. And we were all susceptible to that because that's just the way it was. The beating was very, very common.
Hmm.
And
How old were
so
you? How old were
I
you?
was about 8 or 9,
Eight or
10,
nine.
right in that. I have a difficult concept with age and numbers
Makes
because
sense.
I didn't find out how old I was till I was 12 for the first
Oh,
time.
oh, wow. Yeah.
I didn't understand numbers related to a human being.
Hmm.
The
Yeah.
only thing up to then I ever knew about myself was my first name, Lilia,
Oh,
and that was
wow.
it. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was one of those times when I just everybody went for breakfast. I ran and I went behind the forest, through the forest, and I tripped over the vine floor. And I didn't know the territory, but it brought me down through a steep hill that landed right into the pond. It landed me in there, but I couldn't get out. I couldn't swim. There was nobody there to witness anything, unfortunately. The wall was just straight up. There was nothing to grab onto, and I just started to drown. And
Mm-hmm.
it came to a place in that time where I realized I knew I was gonna die and this was gonna be that's it. Because
Mm-hmm.
I was reaching the bottom to where I couldn't hear the earth sounds anymore.
Oh, wow.
I stopped fighting. I called the chapter Peace in the Depths of Despair
Mm.
because I ran and I ran because I was in despair. But when I reached the bottom of that pond, it was extremely peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
And once I was ready, I just let go. It was just out of nowhere, this amazing, I can never put it in words. The only thing I could ever describe this particular event that took place is amazing power, the great power that
Mm-hmm.
brought me up from under my feet, pushed me back up onto the surface. And because I fought for so long, I was already somewhat on the other side of the pond to where I could grab onto something there and pull myself out of the water. And it was Samuel, this was like as if for the first time I had seen the earth again. Like
Mm-hmm.
I laid there for hours on end, just amazed at the sky and at the surroundings around me. And I was just amazed by the beauty because I was just overtaken by that. I kept staring at the sky, wondering what exists beyond that, because
Mm-hmm.
I was just so taken by it. I wanted to know what this great power was that saved me. And as the story goes, I mean, I went back to the orphanage or back to camp, ready to take on whatever came my way, because I was like, this power, I mean, it just
Yeah.
saved me. I know something exists that stood for me, and that was one of the major events in my life that took place that has caused me to have a very strong sense for faith. And in
Oh
that
yeah.
time, I couldn't put the words to what faith was.
Correct. 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 You're right. You're right. You're right. So similar to you, we are getting to know each other like on the fly. So my in my story where something similar happened to me is I was in Haiti and playing outside. I was about 2 years old, and there was a pot of beans being boiled outside, and a girl pushed me into the pot of beans, and my arm fell in, and my arm got burned, and my chest got burned, and the skin fell down, down my fingertips, right? And so my godmother was there. My mom was in the US working, so she wasn't even present, to try to make a way for us. And then my dad was working, he was a pilot in a neighboring town. So I was back with my godmother and one of my mom's, best friends. And they rushed me to one hospital, and there was no beds available, and then they rushed me to a second hospital, and there was no beds available, and I died in my godmother's arms, and my body went into shock, and I died in her arms, and she just kept praying for me, just kept praying for me, praying for me, praying for me, praying for me. And how it was described to me, it was like in Second Kings, where I don't know if it was a boy that died, and the wise man came, and he face to face, mouth to mouth, and just prayed over him, and that's how they were praying for me. And at one point someone even said, hand me his body, and she was just like, no, I'm gonna pray for him. They left me responsible for him, and God brought me back. So there's for me, I don't remember the experience, but we know that the body keeps the score, right? And it gives me a sense of appreciation each and every day that I wake up with, and I'm like, thank God for every breath, every minute, every hour, that I'm here. And so, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about this sense of appreciation that you have and you operate through.
Yes, that's amazing. You expressed that because, wow, Samuel, you had an amazing godmother. Talk about blessings that God bestowed upon
Warrior.
you at that time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Hmm.
And there's a reason why she is called a godmother.
Yes. No, for sure.
Uh,
For sure. For
what a
sure.
blessing. Wow.
Yeah.
Gratitude is definitely at the forefront of my attitude. No matter what comes my way, the good, the bad, and the ugly, gratitude is the first thing that comes out of my mouth, because I have experienced so much turmoil, Samuel. It's a lot easier for me to, for some reason, come to a place where I'm just more grateful for
Hmm.
everything, no matter
Yep.
what. I don't always understand
Of
everything on the
course.
surface. I mean, I am almost 44 years old, and I
Hmm.
still experience hardships. I don't always
Correct.
understand where where God is bringing all this and why, but just trust, and I have faith, and gratitude is definitely at the forefront, like I expressed. One of the things that I wanted the gratitude that comes from me is my adoption wasn't exactly a fairy tale story.
Mm-hmm.
Here I am many years later, and there was definitely also a physical abuse that was happening.
Oh wow.
And when I came to a place of Christianity, which was the altar call that happened in my early 20s, I had the chance to, when I accepted Christ, I somehow ended up at the very front of the church. And the only way I came to senses like I'm there is when somebody touched me and arms went on me to pray over me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first time I experienced that sense of like accepting Christ, but that gratitude came with that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
thank you, Father. I mean, I was able to come to a place to say, you know what, thank you for whatever reason, whatever the hardships I have endured, whether in the orphanage, whether here in US, thinking that I'm once again saved, meaning, in the safe place, and
Yeah.
I'm not to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
I also have come to a place to acknowledge fairly quickly that, you know what, God uses all sorts of humanity and all sorts of different types of dynamics
Correct.
to express his great love for us, to
Right.
express that absolute. And if you, I mean, obviously, if one keeps their heart open, they do come to a place of like, how could they not come to a place of gratitude? I mean, it's hard
I
not to.
know. I know. Yeah, exactly. It's for me it's not challenging. I just have it, right? It's built in. It's just in my clock, sort of speak,
It
right?
comes
Because it
automatic.
yeah, it puts things into perspective, right? And wherein grow up as challenged as you did, and as I did, it's easy to look at things with a lens of gratitude, or you could look at it through a lens of bitterness, as well. That's where I'm grateful that I have that relationship with God intact, and it provided so much clarity during this this dark time for me in my life, right? So now I could see the vision nice and clear of what he wants for for me in my life, right? And you in your life. Right. So
Mhm.
in our church we have this saying, and it's for the one, right? It's for that, your story is for that one person that will connect with it, and it will touch them, and it will draw them closer, right? My story doesn't sound exactly like yours, but it's for the one. And that's why I do the work that we do in foster care, because it is for that one, right? You want to give them the opportunity to flourish and thrive and grow. So
Yeah.
mhm.
Actually, it's yes. So speaking about foster care and individuals that make those efforts, I also wanted to add, so we didn't have foster care system, obviously, but
Mhm.
and now that I'm older and I understand things the way they were, so back during the communist times, it was one adult per 40 kids, approximately.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
So when the punishment, and then after the fall of the communism, it was one per 60 because
Oh
there was
wow.
less workers. The only form of payment in that time had already converted to a bag of potatoes
Oh wow.
or carrots and things like that. It was not monetary. And so a form of punishment, there was many different types, and very, very cruel. I mean, it's just unjust. It's just
Hmm.
wrong. But what had happened, like for example, when I got punished, and it's not that I never stole, because obviously we had to steal, and we had to, and older girls sold themselves for sex. That was a very
Hmm.
common thing because it was the only way to get something in our stomachs. And when the finger got pointed at you by an adult or by a so-called individual that's taking care of you,
Hmm.
that individual didn't have the time to go through 60 different emotions
Correct.
and figure out like who's telling the truth or whatnot. If the majority fingers pointed at you, let's say 20 out of 60, you got punished. You got punished
Hmm.
severely. And so whether it be walking on dry corn on your knees,
Oh
whether it
wow.
be doing 1,000 sit-ups with a very heavy chair, not on your head, but above your head,
Oh wow.
Whether it be those fresh green sticks that you get from outside because they tell you to go get a stick.
Mm-hmm.
And then another form of punishment was grabbing you by your hair and nothing but by your hair. And
Mm-hmm.
this nickname was called mopping of the floors.
Oh wow.
And they would just take you nothing but by your hair and shovel you back and forth and shift you back and forth. So the punishment was very, very cruel. I never
Mm-hmm.
excused that type of behavior.
Yeah.
And I won't say that we didn't have, there was times when God did give me so many different, hold on a second. Let me go back a little bit. So when
Go for it.
I have written my book,
Go for
Open
it.
Fields and Anchors. Yep. Like you have introduced me in the beginning.
Yes, yes, yes.
For anybody watching and listening, about 6 years ago, when we speak about when you ask me a question back, how am I today and how did it form me and this and that? Well, physically good, intellectually learning. My spiritual has only propelled when I accepted Christ into my life, but my
Mm-hmm.
emotional aspect has been lacking for a long time. Becoming a mom, becoming a wife for the first time 20 years ago, learning the whole process of family dynamics and this and that. And then, of course, growing up where I grew up, not having ever the nurturing aspect of, I had a lot to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, I will say did bless me when I first came to Christ. God blessed me with like 3 or 4 families that came into my life where I learned many different family dynamics and
Mm-hmm.
set what it's like to pray with each other, what it's like to talk about difficult topics. A mother to the daughter, and the father taking out his daughters to on dates and things like that. Those are all the new things I was learning, and I was just eating it all up because I was like, it gave me for the first time that hope that I could actually have a family of my own.
Oh wow.
Because in
Mm-hmm.
that time I didn't have it. I was like, who would want to have bring children into this world after
Mm-hmm.
after
Yeah.
what I've just been through, you know?
Correct. Correct.
I mean,
Correct.
sexual molestation happened to me. It started at age 7 and 8. It was in first grade and it continued till pretty much 17 and a half. That's how long it
Mm.
lasted.
Oh wow.
So you can imagine that my emotional was very screwed up. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't always have a good sense of what belongs where.
Mm-hmm.
And so and of course, I would say, because I've had a lot of people ask me, well, how are you coping with this and that? How did you even happen to do the way you did for the last 20 years as a mother and things like that? And I said, well, I mean, Christ by my side has helped me tremendously.
Yep.
Learning from the women that are surrounded by me, godly women, I have learned so much. I have taken so much from that. The emotional aspect that was lacking in me, I took a better turn about 6 years ago, and I took on that healing process and I dove in. Talk about, I was involved in a lot of with the Christian counselors that
Mm-hmm.
helped me, Samuel, pull away the onion layers. Okay,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
it
Yep. Yep.
helped me do one at a time. But what had happened though is a lot of times helped me, it gave me the right tools and it helped me cope with a lot of things, but it never really gave me that sense of like we have reached where we need to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so I about 6 years ago, when one of my good friends, I'm talk about God's divine appointment for things, let me tell you, they came into my life just in the right time. But they introduced us to this program called Murray Method.
Okay.
And her work is focused only on the emotional aspect of our being. There's 4 main pillars: and spiritual, intellectual, physical, and emotional. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and hers focuses only on the emotional. She says, if you need a spiritual address, go to your priest or your whoever.
Yeah.
If you need a physical address, go to the gym or go to the doctor.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
If you need emotional, I've got you.
Oh, got you. Okay. Perfect.
So, and her emotional is at God centered. But
Mm-hmm.
this particular program was the very first program that allowed me to dive into the center of right down to the very bottom, to the very core, to the very nest.
Mm-hmm.
From the moment I was born, basically, it allowed me. Another name for it would be family of origin.
Mm-hmm.
It allowed me to dive into the very, very beginning of my being, and then slowly climb back up and just go through all the traumas. And let me tell you, Samuel, my traumas
Mm-hmm.
are like 10 feet
They're
long.
long. They're yeah. They're a long list. They're a long
They're
list.
long, long,
I
long.
got I got a I got a long list in my phone too. Peel the onion
Heavens and
back.
mercy.
Yeah.
So this particular program allowed me to come to a place of healing. So much healing came from that. And when I had the desire to want to write the book about 30 years ago when I first came to US,
Yeah.
because everybody that heard my stories, because it was my baseline for norm, like, having kerosene poured over your head because they
Mm-hmm.
were trying to get rid of infestation of lice. You know what
Oh
I mean?
wow.
Just the different types of cultural aspects and approaches, and whatever the system, the way they dealt with things. People were just curious. They were like, how is that really possible? I'm like, why are you acting so surprised? As if, like, I mean, I grew up in that. It was my
Yeah.
norm.
It was
They
your
were like,
norm.
Lilia,
Yeah,
you need
that's
to write your book.
correct. No, 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 for sure, for sure, for sure. It's my process of unpacking, a lot of these experiences have been kind of, interesting for me. I didn't do anything like that, and I wish that I did, but I knew I wanted to grow, and when I started to become more aware that I became wired a certain type of way based on my experience, I just kind of just started looking at it very consciously, and I was like, ask myself, do I think or feel like this because it was survival or because of my experiences? And now try to track down where is the experience that kind of wired me to kind of view things this way, and then how can I grow from this? How can I expand in a way? How do I want to feel about this particular aspect, right? And I kind of highlight or pick, one or two areas, per year, and I try to just work on, maximizing and growing, and one of the aspects was my emotional growth, because the way that, I grew up, my mom told me, you don't need any friends, right? And I kind of took that as, yeah, literal. Yeah, so I took it, I didn't need anybody, right? So I didn't want to connect with anybody. I just kind of was alone and kind of to myself, and I had to really kind of unpack, that wait, hold on, we're wired for connection, right? This, she wanted to protect me, that's why she told me that. And there was some missed opportunities where people would, often mistreat me and, bully me and all this other stuff. So I missed this big aspect of connecting with people, but now I'm making up for missed ground, right? Lost ground, right? So
Yeah.
that's why, I'm doing things like this with the podcast and connecting with people and growing community in a bunch of different ways, because I realize that's actually a hunger of mine,
Mhm.
whereas before it was just non-existent.
Yes, absolutely. It's
Hmm.
amazing how we've taken on a lot of and a lot of times it's unconscious. Most people, with the way they act and react today, they don't have always the understanding or consciousness of understanding how it's being, where the button comes from. How are you
Hmm.
being triggered? How are you being, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So, but this particular program allowed, because it went down to the very bottom and you start to slowly grow with it and figure out as you go, as you were growing, it really opened up my senses for understanding that pool of all of your stuff. Like, let's say that would be your tape, when when she said not to you don't need any new friends.
Hmm.
So it's something you adapt, but now you're using it as for everyday life.
Hmm. Correct.
Well, in that time, maybe you needed it to survive, but
Correct.
today,
Correct. Correct.
do you know what I
You,
mean?
you just
So,
don't need it. Yeah, exactly.
and it's like, how do we rewrite that tape? How do we refocus and relearn that habit that we've learned long time ago? Whether the scenario purposely, you know what I mean, whatever the situation we were involved in that time, for whatever reason, our body learned to do a certain thing and our mind
Correct.
does a certain way. So It's
Mhm.
really, really that particular. So what this program did allow me to do, though, Samuel, is when I did have that desire to want to write that book 30 years ago. Of course, I didn't write it then because I mean English was my biggest barrier. I couldn't even form a sentence, for goodness
Yeah.
sake.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
let alone write
I
a
get
book.
it. Yeah.
But then 20 years ago, when I met my husband, I had the second prompt desire to want to write the book. And my husband was supposed to be the one to help me write it. But instead, we got married and had 4 kids.
Oh yeah, you got busy very quick.
So homeschooling and
Yes.
homesteading just kind of took over my life. And that got put on shelf. Writing the book, I said, okay, fine. But what I will say this, I am so grateful that here I am 6 years later after this emotional journey healing process that I've been going through. That God brought me on this journey with this particular counseling program is because it
Hmm.
allowed me to bring about my healthy balance perspective. So my childhood isn't all just doom and gloom.
Yep.
I
Yep.
After I've went through all the traumas, she strongly urged me to go ahead and put like a see-through paper on top, and she says, now I want you to go back and I want you to go in between the lines of all these traumas and write something small and something quick that helped you to survive that moment. It might have been some sort of interruption, somebody saying something, or things like that. And she said what she likes to call them was God highlights, God moments. And so when I had written my book a year, almost, well, 8 months ago, last May, it really allowed me to write my book in the short story format. But because it was so heavy and there's just so much drama in there as well, there's also a lot of highlights in there.
Hmm.
The subtitle is Hope, Endurance, Suffering, and Grace. So acknowledging that there's hope, there was enduring, there was a lot of suffering, and then ultimately the ones in between is grace.
Yep. For sure.
Acknowledging God's goodness and how He helped me to overcome and survive all those years and
Yeah.
all
For
those
sure.
traumas.
Yep. 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 Yep.
So it came out a pretty good. I mean, I'm hopefully came out a pretty well balanced. I have gotten a lot
Listen,
of wonderful.
I used to say all the time to my wife, I was like, I came out pretty all right, pretty unscathed, right? Little did you know you got to do the work, right, to
Oh,
be whole. But a lot of it, honestly, is for me just hearing the word and understanding God's love, and then trying to mimic that and unpack, the things that we learned for survival. Right, is kind of like how I've been kind of walking through life, and that's kind of how I hope people, will grow, as well. You know.
well, so I wanted to say, along with being a foster parent,
Hmm.
it's no different than individuals that came into our life when we were about 14, and finally the gates of the orphanage opened up and they're allowing these missionaries to come. Okay.
Hmm.
That was the first time I got a chance to taste a little sliver of that exotic fruit, orange. I've
Hmm.
never had
Yes.
anything like that. I thought it was the most fascinating thing in the world.
Yeah.
And then they brought bread with them. It was right around Passover, Easter. It's Passover.
Hmm.
And it was with that, they didn't just bring the exotic fruit and the piece of bread, they also brought in the word of Jesus Christ, the,
Hmm.
the great news.
Yeah.
And of course, this is my impression for the first time. I'm already what, 13, 14 years old. I get to
Yeah.
hear about this guy named Jesus
Yeah. 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 Like,
that
who is this
that
guy?
is
Yeah.
that is capable of loving unconditionally.
Yeah.
But the concept of love, that didn't even exist in my head. I couldn't even comprehend. The only
Correct.
thing that I could connect anything to that was like, or even like when they touched the missionaries, when they touched you, you fought through the crowds to get to them because there was only 10 of them.
Correct.
And out of 800, the little 300 quantity is in that separate home, but in the same territory. And so the other 500 is trying to, swarm, you're
Yeah.
fighting through the crowds to get to these people. And when they touch you for the first time, just that
Hmm.
touch alone
Yeah.
it screamed like, I care. I was like, wow, does that really, like, is this like
This is
the
real.
light of Christ in their faces was like unimaginable. It was like, I see something in them. I see something on their faces and I want that for myself, you know? So whether, and I know a family right now that fosters, well, actually they fostered 5 kids. Now they've adopted all of them. It's been such a blessing because they are such an amazing family. They fought really hard to not separate the siblings, to keep them all together. Anyway, so I wanted to encourage, whether you're a missionary, whether you're a foster care
Hmm.
individual, to be that light to those kids, because I mean, they do lack in that emotional nurturing
Correct.
aspect, you know.
Hmm.
And for us, like I said, just that touch alone is what did it. It's like, and then of course the stories of Jesus Christ. Well, as a skeptical as I was, I have teenagers now. I mean, I
Yeah.
have 12, 14,
Yeah.
16, 18. And
Hmm.
so the skepticism was at the very highest in my time. In that time, I mean, life's already served me so much
Hmm.
bad in that time. I mean, I
For
only
sure.
questioned everything. And so, the Christ is able to do this and do that and then love you unconditionally. That hope only lasted for a short time, because, you know,
Hmm.
they leave and we're
Yep.
back to
Back
reality.
to reality. Back to
Back
normal.
to reality.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do want to encourage. I mean, the children that are in your homes for, whether it's a short minute, whether
Hmm.
it's 10 years, it's such an amazing I don't even know what to describe it, Samuel, because I'm not in your shoes. I just know,
Yeah.
being adopted, I know what it means to be, to give that child,
Hmm.
you know what I mean?
For me, I
The
get
sense of
to,
belonging.
yeah, for me, how I look at it is I get to kind of provide a contained environment where they get to almost like they get to be kids, right? That was the biggest thing. Like for me, like I felt like I never got to really be a kid, right? I was living, but living through survival and chaos, and I didn't get to kind of view life through the lens of being like just an innocent kid, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I get to kind of provide not just that, but some of the things that was lacking as well for me, with comfort, love, and so in a lot of ways, it's kind of like nourishing me back to health as well as the parent. But I get to kind of provide this atmosphere that is allowing them to thrive and to grow, which I love, because I'm seeing some like amazing things from them, and I'm excited for them, right? So I'm excited to kind of continue pushing on this mission and seeing what else God brings into my life, with just continuing to say yes, and with other kids, and then having our kids participate. They're active participant, right? We always talking about actively serving, and we use that kind of wording, right? So they know it's like this is what we do. you
Yeah.
know and
It's,
you go ahead.
have you had children of all ages? I was 15 when I was adopted. So
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure I was a handful when I first came to US.
We typically take in babies, very very young kids is what we typically do, because we had a I took in twins, and then my son was born, and then they were like 2, and then my son was born, so they were still little, but we had met them when they were like 11 months. And we just kind of kept that. So then now we take in smaller kids, because it kind of allows them to kind of participate and be helpful. I do want to adopt older kids at some point. I want to just make sure that our kids are structured and disciplined, and are in the right place for that. I want to be able to you know, get a kid that's going to age out and provide a home that allows them to kind of be safe and come back to, and, just have meals, and just have someone, right, to kind of rely on. So that's kind of like what my whole vision is about. So, um, thank you for sharing so much. But I wanted to transition a little bit, right? And we could still continue to dive into your story, but um because one of the things that I've seen or strength from going through challenging times is taking on challenges like being a entrepreneur, right, or starting your business, right? And kind of walk me through, what that process looked like for you.
Oh, wow. Wow, Samuel, you're the first one to ask me that because that is something I'm going to be writing in my second book. Because just arriving to US was I can't, I don't even have the words to describe it yet. I'll
Hmm.
try to figure out how I'm going to put it on paper because I haven't done it yet. My book ends at leaving the orphanage
Living
gate.
over. Okay. All right.
Yes, yes. But arriving to US offers such a brand new, oh my gosh, it was a different culture, different world, different everything. Experiencing exotic colors for the first time and all that.
Hmm.
One of the things that my adopted father did say was a land of opportunity. It was as if like you can have your own business, you can
Hmm.
have your own. So of course, infrastructure in our country in that time, let's say a church is going up, it would take, or even a regular building would go up, it would take 20 years for it to actually go up, and
Oh
most
wow.
times it never would ever get finished.
Oh wow.
Coming to US infrastructure, your home is up in like 3 months,
Hmm.
and
Yep. Yep.
not,
Yep.
not even, maybe even shorter than that in
Yep.
some
Yep. Yep.
cases.
Hmm.
So I was really fascinated about the infrastructure. I was very fascinated in how quickly things can come about. And so one of my stories that I speak of in my book is cleaning. So after I've done a lot of my healing and journey. Cleaning homes is my business. I clean
Hmm.
homes,
Yep.
but I have taken what was meant for bad. I have
Hmm.
taken it into converted into good. So I have
Yep.
so much goodness that came out of that.
Yep.
There is a routine, there's a structure, there is
Yep.
a certain way of approaching things.
Correct.
Every day, I still learn something new. I've been doing it
Correct.
for
Correct. Correct.
a
Correct. Correct.
long time. I've been doing it for many, many years.
Hmm.
And still, every day, either my client will point something out or I see
Hmm.
something that I don't like. And it's just that I love it because I'm presented with a new challenge every time. And I'm
Yep.
always ready to take on whatever that is.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
um, and to see a transformation happen is just it's always amazing to me because I love being a part of that transformation. I can come into someone's home, I see what it is, my eyes lock in, my focus
Yep.
is on, and I'm ready, and I can flip it in 3 hours. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. Exactly. No. No. No.
I-
That's
so
great perspective. Because
um,
go ahead.
America, great land of opportunity. I
Hmm.
mean, never in a million years thinking I
Hmm.
could own my own business. Here I am.
Yep, 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 for sure. There's something about going through because when you start your own business, you got to go through challenges, right? And for me, because similar to you, because I've seen so many challenges, certain challenges like building a business just doesn't look that challenging to me because how I measure challenge is this life threatening? No. Okay, well, we could figure it out,
Mhm.
right? So there's this um, there's certain skills and certain things that you've gone through that helps you kind of propel you to continue to take the next step even when things are hard, to build a business and to get more clients and to be able to be self-sufficient. So what would you say are attributes that you think are important in being a business owner or entrepreneur?
Um, I would say one of the biggest things, and especially when we're talking about risk taking, is to be really aware of your insecurities, because relationships is like the key in any business, actually, in any, and to learn how to navigate through the relationships in a healthy manner matters a great deal as well. That's what really, I mean, we connect. We can't just fly solo through businesses and expect that we're
Correct.
going to do really well. Relationships and connections with other human beings.
Hmm.
Each one offers a certain perspective, whether it be something you like or don't like hearing,
Correct. Correct. Correct.
offers offers a certain perspective that will help you to propel through that.
Right.
So unless one is aware of those insecurities and what's keeping them back, if they're willing to open up and just listen and just let it be and let it reflect on that for a while, it's amazing how many doors God opens up. It really is.
No,
I
for
mean,
sure.
I've had situations where I have been very I would be upset right at first if somebody complained about something, right? And I would take a step back and I would say, God, please teach me, help me figure out. I'm upset because I feel my insecurity in that time feels that
Correct.
I'm not good enough to reach to that level of what the expectation was in the first place, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I come to a place where God is teaching me that, hey, listen, you are good enough, but
Yep.
there are still tools and techniques. There's always a place to
To
get
grow.
better, to
Mm-hmm.
grow. Always a place. If you ever
Always.
feel that you have come to a place that you're done growing,
Mm-hmm.
your business will collapse.
Correct. Correct. Correct.
There's always a place to grow. There's always a place to learn. There's always a place to improve.
Yes.
So that's my approach to the overall when it comes to business aspects or relationships in general.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. There's always an opportunity to grow. There's always something to examine. One of the biggest and best things I've ever done was uh, apply lessons learned after each transaction, each situation, each experience, right? And kind of just download and dictate all of that information and really kind of go through how did that transaction go? Did it go the way that I want to? How did this person perform? Did they da da da? What was my feedback? What and and I just get very honest with myself,
Hmm.
right, on the feedback. And I think that's a challenge that oftentimes, because you talked about it, people with insecurities have, is being super honest with yourself. But once you get that level of honesty, it does allow you to grow and it does allow you to adjust forward. So one of the things it allows you to do is not mimic those same mistakes, so you don't have that same experience,
I know,
right?
right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
another one, it allows you to set healthy boundaries. It
Hmm.
allows you to be able to know how far you can go with individuals in the workplace and the work setting. The more you are in tune with your own self, the more you are in tune with your own knowing where your things are coming from, how you're triggered, how you're affected, how you're feeling, even to know how where your feelings are coming from, like you
Correct.
expressed earlier. Those are all very important because the more in tune you are with that, the more you apply it, the faster and quicker you start to recognize and
Yeah.
like, okay, so okay, this is affecting me here, but this is not a place for that. So now you know how to set a boundary. Now you know how to like, okay, this for now can wait in your mental state. You're saying that, and now you know
Hmm.
how to approach this in a professional manner to where you can come across with loving and respect, Christ-like. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Correct, 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 correct. Yeah, and this is all a growing process, very similar to a lot of your stories, my story, and stuff like that. So one of the biggest reframes I literally discovered this reframe last year was life happens for me, not to me, right?
Mhm,
And
mhm.
then what can I learn or grow through, reframing some of these experiences that I've had to help me grow, right? And that's something that is, I feel like, is a nugget to you guys that are watching, is reframing these experiences, especially the traumatic ones,
Mhm.
right? And so I got very tired of um, being re-victimized, right? Because you adjust in a way because of this thing that happened, right? But what happens is it continues to re-victimize you, and it puts you in almost like in a cage. That's how
You
trauma
you
works.
you sabotage
You
yourself
sabotage
all the
yourself.
goodness
Y-
of all the good things that can happen.
exactly. So until you reframe some of these thoughts and these experiences, then you're not going to be able to grow, right?
Yeah.
And I want you to be free.
And that reframe that you express, I like to call them rewriting of
Correct.
the old tapes, whatever is
Correct.
holding you down, whatever is traumas. For example, I like to encourage people to just, of course, with a healthy counselor in place,
Hmm. Yeah.
to dive in actually to the very bottom of it and figure out, because unless this is my quote: "How low one will go is how high they will fly."
Correct. Correct. Correct.
That
Correct.
was one of my realized goals I came up with about 5 years ago, after I've started, the emotional health journey process, and I realized to where, and for some people, peeling away the layers might work. It depends.
Yep. Hmm.
For me, for example, because I had such a pile of traumas that I had to work through, I was like, I needed to just really dive in. So
Yeah. Yep. 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 For sure. You got to
it
want to
worked for
grow.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. No. For sure. For sure. For sure. So at the end of every podcast, I ask everybody this one question: is what would you say is your best lessons learned from life and in business?
Attitude of gratitude. That's it.
Yes, it.
That's it.
That's
It's
it.
that simple.
That is.
Attitude. I
That
mean,
is.
even if it's hard for you to say thank you, just
Hmm.
whisper it or even say it in your mind. And the more it comes and the more you start doing it, the more it
Hmm.
becomes evident. Even your attitude will change.
Correct.
Your systematic surroundings around you starts changing as well. The things do become positive. When you're coming across an individual that is unfortunately maybe having a bad day, you know how to act and react in a healthy way. Do you see what I'm saying? Not just in the way where you're just brushing them off or you are reacting in the rude way and things like that. There
Yeah.
is way there, so there's a trick to that. And I know that there's special graces there in there. If one can just start with that simple habitual aspect of their journey in their life, just that little small thing, it
Yep.
grows and it evolves and it just becomes, and then things change around you. And it's really is fascinating. I mean, I had to really become the person of attitude with gratitude, because the amount of the things that I have went through,
Correct.
in order to help me become a better person, become know how to overcome certain obstacles that come my way, know how to have healthy relationships. And
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, it makes a world of a difference.
All right. So you heard that attitude of gratitude, and that's coming from you with a story that is no one could probably fully relate to. So I just wanted to tell you thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for I'll go ahead and I'll leave you with this and market your book. Go ahead.
I wanted to say, get your book at Amazon. On
Go get it.
Amazon.
Open Fields and Iron Curtain. Check it out on Amazon. You will
I,
not be disappointed.
I wanted to say one more thing, Samuel,
Go for it.
if it's okay.
Hmm.
Really quick, when you read the book or when you hear the stories, whether it be my stories or anyone else's testimonials of just life and journey of life in general, uh, and for mine, for example, my only encouragement to listeners and readers is, if you go through mine and you wonder and you say to yourself, I had it, she had it so much worse. What am I complaining about? Kind of a deal.
Hmm.
I would want to encourage everyone to try to abstain from making comments like that, only because it's sort of, it undermines where each and every one of you have been through as well.
Correct.
And I would want to encourage each and every one of you to take a step back and reflect on your past and your childhood and your family of origin. Of course, with some of you, maybe with a counselor nearby, uh, and to have a safe place to do so. That really, really does wonders, actually. And my testimony is just a sharing so that it allows for everyone else to dive in and to be able to come to their own place of healing.
No, for sure, for sure, for sure. I just want to say thank you for joining us today on this podcast, the Pro Design Builder. It's not just about building a business, it's about building a vision and a life by design. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Samuel. Have a good one.
Yeah.